traveling to the state access abortion care. And the wonderful producers and co-producers reached out to us a few months ago and was like, hey, do you want to partner on this? I was like, hell yeah, we love Dryland. I was familiar with the play. And more than that, we love bringing the emotion and also the passion for abortion access to folks who may not always be thinking about it. So I know there's probably a lot of feelings that folks are dealing with right now, and we invite you to breathe and process them, and hopefully also this conversation will allow you to do so as well. I don't think I said my name. My name is Chelsea Williams-Diggs. I'm NYAAF, or New York Abortion Access Fund's Executive Director, and I'm joined by a really, really special panel. And one of the reasons that they're special, besides being individually amazing humans, is that they're actually, none of them live in New York or anywhere near New York. We've got New Mexico, California, and Missouri represented. It's a beautiful coincidence that all these people were here in New York, and I'm really grateful that they can bring their expertise and also their regional expertise to this conversation. So if everyone can introduce themselves and say their names, their pronouns, their organization or their title, and either why or what brought you to this work of abortion access, or if you're really special, you can maybe find a way to answer both questions, a scene or a theme or a dialogue from the play that is resonating with you and resonating with your work. So we'll start with you, Rachel.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Lorenzo. I'm from the Mescalero Apache tribe and the Pueblo of Laguna, both of which are tribes based in New Mexico, where I'm born and raised. I'm the founder and co-executive director at Indigenous Women Rising. I also use she and they pronouns. Part of what brings me to this work is that I've had multiple abortions and I have 2 kids. One of the scenes that really resonated with me is the pain that comes with having an abortion. And I don't think our movement to secure abortion access is very honest about some of the realities of what abortion seekers go through. And it was really beautiful to see Amy have a doula, essentially. No matter where we are having our abortions, no matter our circumstances or our age, it's so important to have someone with us as we go through this process. And part of the work that we do is acknowledging the grief that might come with having an abortion. It's, as an Indigenous person, sometimes it feels a little icky, especially when I hear white women say, abortion on demand without apology. My people don't resonate with that. We want to honor and acknowledge the process that our bodies go through, whether we continue a pregnancy or not. And I really love the scene in the play that was really raw and honest about the pain, but also the beauty and the friendship that just got stronger through abortion access.
I love that. Thank you, Rachel. I have so many responses, but I will hold them. Danielle?
Yeah, that was beautiful. My name is Danielle Bezalel. I am the creator and host of a podcast called Sex Ed with DB, and my whole career is about getting science-backed sex education to as many people as possible. And I loved a lot of things about the play. Also, my pronouns are she, her. But I would have to agree. I think that I thought it was an excellent play. I mean, I thought the acting was so spectacular. I'm still kind of processing, and I was just blown away by it. But yeah, I think that the scene where the actual abortion happens, we don't really see that in media. Typically, if someone with a uterus is having an abortion, that person is taking the pills and then it cuts to the next day, right? But the fact that we actually in the audience got to all experience, what that, simulation essentially is like for an actual person, I found really raw and very moving. And it's my mission to get pleasure-centered, medically accurate sex education to all through my podcast and beyond.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess. I am the Executive Director of Missouri Abortion Fund. I use she, they pronouns. The scene that resonates for me as someone who's had a career both in the political world and the nonprofit world and working with a lot of young people is the reality of the myths and what young people were experiencing. So the laundry detergent, the knitting needle, all of this mythology, but also reality of what young people choose to do because they are deprived of accurate information. And then I'll get into a little bit about the landscape in Missouri here in a little bit, but just the lived reality of myself as an abortion fund and the work that we do on the ground in Missouri is restricted because of our legal landscape. So even the education that we want to provide and the conversations we want to have, we are legally unable to have those conversations with young people specifically. And so we have young people existing trying to navigate this with inaccurate information and just trying to figure it out amongst each other. And so that I think is very real and still very much, this scene could be a Missouri high school locker room currently today, right now. So that this is not just back then and things are getting like right now today, that could be young people's reality in Missouri.
Yeah, I appreciate all your answers. Can we give another round of applause? So I actually watched the play last night as well, and it's like hitting me differently today. I don't know why. I'm feeling more things. But I really appreciate what you said about kind of how different communities like understand and process, right? The pain, the grief, perhaps the joy, perhaps even the laughter, right? The all the things that come with that. And I think what our movement struggles with is we try to say, like, in order to push for legality, right, or access, we need to diminish the experience. But what's something really beautiful is, like, actually abortion can be similar to birth, right? Not always, right? Everyone has different experiences, but being able to, like, show that, like, artistically and very raw and perhaps uncomfortably as well, I think was really bold. And y'all may have noticed, maybe partly because the reference to Facebook, although some people here might still use Facebook, shouts to y'all, but the play, oh my God, do your kids make fun of you?
No,
They were like, they don't make fun of me. But the play was actually, was taking place in 2014, which, although in some ways feels like yesterday, was actually 12 years ago, which is a while, and it was before the Dobbs decision or the end of Roe v. Wade. So in Florida, at the time, abortion was still technically legal, right? But when you're a teenager and you don't have a credit card or information, and you're like dealing with stigma and all these other things, just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's accessible, right? Same things that we're seeing still in New York to this day. So Jess, you alluded to a little bit of this, so hopefully everyone here knows that, and if you don't, we're here to tell you, that in 2022, Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court, and abortion was no longer legal, or a protected right, a protected legal right across the United States. And pretty much right away, a bunch of states started banning or more heavily restricting abortion. Many states continue to have really strong either full-out bans or really strong restrictions, and then some states are still battling, which might get lost in the news, right? There's actually still some battles at the state level of like whether or not abortion is legal. So Jess, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what's happening in Missouri and perhaps maybe broadly, right? Like what's happening across the U.S. and in Florida too, right? Where the play takes place.
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this with I prepared a statement that I'm going to read, and that is due to the fact that our fund is in active current litigation. So that is our reality on the ground in Missouri. So currently nearly all Missourians leave the state for care. We funded 1,897 patients last year, and they all left the state to get their abortion. So prior to the Dobbs decision, as Chelsea mentioned, we've always had substantial restrictions on the books for years in Missouri, well before the bans that were enacted because of the right that was removed from the Supreme Court. And so during the time of the play in Missouri, regardless of age, you would have been required to move through a 72-hour waiting period where the provider that would have provided your abortion would have you would have had two appointments. Appointment number one, in which you would receive a 30-plus page packet of state-mandated misinformation, telling you about all the ways that your abortion was wrong and all of the risks that were going to have happen. And then 72 hours later, you were deemed to come back for your second appointment. During this time, and even now currently, We also have a private insurance and Medicaid ban in Missouri. This has been on the books for years. So it requires every Missourian to pay out of pocket at the time of their care. You are not allowed to use Medicaid. You are not allowed to use your private insurance. Even if your employer wanted to provide a rider or coverage for you, it is not legal for you to have that as a Missourian. So all of these challenges happen. Then we move into strictly young people. The state of Missouri also requires a 2-parent written consent, and you see this in a lot of states with bans. We can talk all day long about how that does not work for young people, and young people know what they need. And so when we're creating legal practices that don't fundamentally provide high quality abortion care, it's really creating all of these limits and barriers. And so we have been the testing ground in Missouri for some of the most restrictive and frankly ridiculous policies surrounding abortion for years. As you all know, Missouri was one of many states in Missouri was one of many states in 2024 that did sweeping ballot initiatives. And those were an attempt to have something on the books, a constitutional amendment that could be utilized to provide access to abortion. I think at this point in time, we're witnessing, as Chelsea said, legal right to something never means you actually have access. If you're a young person, I don't know, I did not have hundreds of dollars and reliable transportation and the ability to know where to go to get an abortion. And even now, we have adults in Missouri who are not provided that information. So with the ballot last year, the amendment passed, and then of course the state immediately sued. And so currently there's what they call a temporary injunction. So some of that 72-hour waiting period, that misinformation is not required now to access abortion care, but there's only 3 buildings in the entire state in which you can make an appointment 1 day a week between the hours of 9 and 1. So of the 1,897 people we funded last year, they all left the state. Most of our population is on the borders of the state between St. Louis and Kansas City, and so we have partnerships with clinics across the country. But again, when we reflect on the play of what this reality looks like for young people and what it takes, in addition to a state that provides in our state budget, millions of dollars are earmarked for what they call alternatives to abortion care. And that is a state-funded program that props up crisis pregnancy centers, which operate as fake clinics and will lie to people and mislead people. And so all of that stigma that young people are navigating, period, just is tenfold in the state of Missouri. And so it's very difficult with the myriad of policies that are happening on the ground here for us to operate holistically in the way that we want to meet the needs of abortion seekers, and we do the best that we can. But for a lot of funds, there's about 100 funds across the country. We all are having to adapt and be agile at any given moment when local, state, and federal policies are changing. So like in Missouri, there's multiple lawsuits, and at any point in time, the court or the judge could change, like it could go a next step in the process, and then the rules that I have to operate under will change. And so prior to coming here, I was on the phone with my attorney. I'm going to say this. Is this okay? Like, what are we doing? And so that is the constant risk assessment for funds that are in restrictive states of how we operate with our risk limits the way in which we can meet the needs of the folks that we serve. So there's a lot more there, but we are one of many states where things are restricted. As we said, everyone's leaving. And so I think just to take a pause and critically think about what that actually would look like in your lives and how challenging and difficult that is. That's just something that I think, again, we talk about this legal fight, even with legality, if you cannot pay for your abortion, if you cannot get to your abortion, if you do not understand the choices and options of where you can go for your abortion, you don't have choice and you don't have access.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So in Florida, is anybody here from Florida originally? Out yourself? No. Okay. The land of the Jamba Juices. So Florida is the land of the Jamba Juices and also the land of a 6-week abortion ban. So currently in Florida, there is a ban for abortions past 6 weeks. There are clinics on the ground in Florida that are able to provide medication abortion, like in the play, as well as procedural or surgical abortions up to 6 weeks. But as many of y'all know, or if you don't know, most people don't know they're pregnant by 6 weeks. Or even if they do, the ability to take off work, make an appointment, go is very, very difficult. So a lot of Floridians, similar to people in Missouri, are leaving the state to access care. And specifically in New York, we're seeing a huge influx of people from Florida. And in fact, Florida is our #1 state represented outside of New York. We are seeing so many Floridians, a lot of times because they have family, friends, direct flights, and can easily get to New York. But it's huge, and to your point of like how difficult it is to actually get out of your state, even if it's a drive, right? And to get care is we can't minimize the difficulty that people are literally doing every day, including right now, right? Saturday is a big abortion day. That sounds funny, but it's true. Like a lot of people get abortion on Saturday. Can you guess why?
They gotta work during the week.
They don't work, exactly. I mean, people do work on Saturdays, but a lot of people don't, right? So it's often the only day they can go. Danielle, Jess talked a lot about young people and misinformation. I'd love to hear you talk more. As we saw in the play, there's a lot of misinformation about their bodies, reproductive systems, sex, also relationships, healthy relationships. So would love if you could talk more about why you think it's important to make sex ed accessible to everyone, but also like to center in pleasure.
Absolutely, yeah. So if everyone could just like close their eyes and just picture the kind of sex ed that they got growing up, I would bet that it wasn't very good for most people here. Maybe a few of you are lucky and you had a really great teacher, a really great parent. Most people don't have that. And so the #1 question actually that I get in my DMs on Instagram is some form of, am I pregnant? Some teen, some young 20-year-old asking, hey, like my boyfriend, I think he came, but I'm not really sure, and then he fingered me. Like there's a lot of questions that young people have. They don't know their bodies, they don't know how pregnancy works, and this happens weekly. I get so many questions and so much misinformation that's floating around there, especially when folks don't know how to navigate what's real and what's not on TikTok, AI. There's a lot of things that young people have to navigate. And so for me, the main reason, the thing that drives me is something I know to be true is if people have access to high quality, age appropriate, pleasure centered, science-backed sex education, they will have the tools to make the best decisions for themselves to live happy and healthy lives, period. It's that simple. And so to me, I've been doing my podcast now for 9 years. I have 330 episodes, 13 seasons. I care so deeply about this work because I know that if I can at least reach one person to get them the kind of care or information that they need in hopefully a fun and entertaining and humorous way, that hopefully that can change people's lives. And so for folks up here who work in funds, who are doing the on-the-ground procedures, giving folks the resources they need, giving them the education, they're out here actually changing people's futures. And so my hope with my podcast and my work is to do the same with education and connecting the people who follow me and who listen to me to folks like you all if and when they or someone they know, a friend or a cousin or anybody might need an abortion. And so to me, abortion is just another topic that's just as important to cover as sex workers' experiences, period management, pain during sex, pleasure, anything. So normalizing abortion is really, really key to my work and a lot of other sex educators' work as well.
Rachel, you talked about this a little bit in your introduction, but we know that abortion access is tied to so many other issues, right? So we're all advocates for abortion, but we also care about our communities, we care about health justice, we care about economic justice, immigration justice, so on and so on and so forth. And we know when someone needs an abortion, the rest of their lives doesn't just take a pause, right? They're still holding all of the injustices, all of the messy, some of the good, right, at the same time. times. So I'm curious, in your work supporting particularly Indigenous folks, also undocumented folks, how do you see these systems kind of show up, right, in real time when you're supporting people accessing abortion?
Yeah. One of the things that I'm really proud of, but is also really frustrating, is that we're the only native-led and native-centered abortion fund in the country. There's no other abortion fund like us that centers only Native people, the people who stewarded this land across the country since time immemorial.
The Seminoles,
Yes, the Seminole Indians. Right, we have been here, we have used the environment to control our fertility, to help us with breastfeeding, to help with everyday ailments that we go through as we age, right? And the violent displacement of Indigenous people from our lands, or the inability to migrate, which is a natural human thing that everyone has done across the globe forever, right? When systems of oppression like the federal government have kept us from accessing our sacred sites, have kept us from accessing traditional medicines, and have kept us essentially in open air prisons, aka reservations, where we have to ask the federal government if we can change pipes so we can get clean water, if we can have bladed roads and pavement. It wasn't until about 15 years ago, my reservation, where I grew up in Laguna, finally got street signs, right? And so Google Maps and Apple Maps, like, yay, but they're still very inaccurate. The point is that when we look at a lot of the policies that are being passed at the state and federal level, and even at a municipal level, all we have to do to see how it impacts everybody is to look at how it impacted Native people first. Because a lot of the things that we're seeing with how ICE is being deployed in cities across the country and different states, the United States government already did that to Native people. It's just a different group of people, right? And so what we're trying to do is model what it looks like to care for communities, even if you're not Native, right? And so with our abortion fund, for instance, we don't just fund abortion, we also fund the ceremonies that might come after to help people grieve, and the funeral home costs to transport human remains so they can complete those ceremonies, right? And when we do that, and then within our own organization internally, we have 100% medical, vision, dental covered for all of our staff, and then 70% for dependents and spouses, and maybe one day we'll get it to 100. And we do our best to model what it looks like to take care of our staff. We also have to recognize the harm that academia has done and the limitations it puts, especially on Indigenous people. So we have a policy that we will never require folks who come work for us to have a college degree, right? And so we're looking at the economic justice, we're looking at immigration justice, we're looking at all of these different movements and showing that they're not separate things. They are inherently related to each other, and we really need our movement to look at all of these movements holistically rather than piecing them out.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and there's so much to learn, right? To how we understand how we can take care of each other, right? How we can kind of model different systems of care. I think abortion funds across the country try to do that in different ways. In New York specifically, I think, just to really concretize what this looks like too, right? Like if you are an immigrant in New York City, regardless of your documentation status, you're probably scared, right? There's a lot, if you're an immigrant anywhere right now in the US, but let's just say New York City, and you find yourself pregnant and now you need to go to a clinic. Well, where's that clinic? How are you getting to that clinic, right? What if there's a police station near it? What if there's recent ICE activity, right? What if you don't speak the language? What if you don't even speak Spanish, right? What if you speak an indigenous language to Mexico or another country in Latin America, right? So what does that look like for your access, right? So immigration justice is just one example, right? We know there are so many other systems and injustices that we grapple with as humans that sometimes the intersections aren't clear until you're just living it day to day, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have health insurance, and I don't have childcare, and my community's being targeted by ICE, and the federal government is like shutting down and trying to take over the entire city, and, right? I think as people that work at abortion funds, like on the ground, and people that support community, we also learn, right? Like sometimes you're like, I didn't even think of that. You're like, what the hell? Like I didn't even, you know what I mean? And it's such a gift, right? To be able to help people get a concrete need. And it's a gift to learn from organizations like Indigenous Women Rising, who meet concrete needs around abortion, but also more like holistic needs as well. And it's something I think we're all trying and learning to do differently. I think we're almost at time. So I'm going to give everyone one last question, and I'm going to combine them, okay? So the first question is, and Rachel, you didn't say reproductive justice or reproductive sovereignty explicitly, right? But those are kind of reproductive sovereignty, to be clear, you can define it, is your Indigenous Women Rising's framework. But reproductive justice, the way we understand that, right, is the right to have children, not have children, and raise the children we have in safe and sustainable communities, right? It's just that. It's understanding the intersections of how abortion access is deeply connected to all of our abilities to be healthy humans and raise healthy humans. So this fight is long, right? We're not going to achieve reproductive justice tomorrow, not even in New York. But what is your reproductive future? What does that look like tangibly? If you envision this reproductive justice future, what does that look like? So that's one. And then two is, what is a concrete resource or action everyone in the audience can do to help you get to that reproductive justice future? Or help us get to that reproductive justice future? Anybody ready to go? Danielle, you look ready. Are you ready?
How did you know that? Yeah,
Okay.
I do feel ready.
Danielle, take it.
I'd like to start with the concrete action. Since we're all together, I'd love if everyone took out your phones
Take out your phone.
and go to Instagram. I'm sure most people here have Instagram. And follow New York Abortion Access Fund. Just do it right now. And for those of you who are ready to do that, make sure, set an alarm in your phone.
NYAA Fund.
NYAA Fund.
On
And they'll
Instagram.
have these folks' amazing funds tagged because we've been posting
Yes.
all about this event, so make sure you follow them as well. That's step one for you. Step two is set an alarm for yourself, for whenever's convenient, to donate $5 to an abortion fund. Choose one. Choose whatever one that you want. I picked a random one in Florida, and I donate $20 a month to it because to Tampa Bay.
Hell yeah.
We love Tampa
Because
Bay.
Floridians have to travel because they have these bans, right? We're not going to be able to donate to every single fund. Just pick one. Perhaps these funds as well that you donate just monthly to. Funds depend on monthly donations to be able to provide access and resources to patients. So do a one-time donation, but I really, really hope that you do a monthly donation. So that's the concrete thing that I think that you should do. Follow folks online and see what they're doing and donate monthly to an abortion fund. To me, reproductive justice is not only access for all, and especially for BIPOC folks, for trans folks, for minority folks, but also to be able to access things with joy and with pleasure. We have enough sadness and enough harsh experiences that we're all experiencing in the world right now, especially in the particular body that you might be in. But pleasure can be free. And so whatever pleasure feels and looks like for you, think about that and figure out how to integrate that into your daily life, because pleasure is resistance. And so to me, a future where folks can actually access reproductive justice as I would like them to includes pleasure. So really consider what that means for you.
I'm so happy you went first, although I'm like, woo! What do we do after that? Jess, are you ready?
I'm not ready.
Rachel, are you ready?
Yes, no, but I'll go.
Okay.
So, as Chelsea alluded to, we have a framework called reproductive sovereignty, where it's not meant to compete with reproductive justice. It's meant to complement reproductive justice. And what we mean by reproductive sovereignty is going back a little bit and analyzing tribal governance systems. There's so many incredible institutions to do research. We have tribes who call New York their ancestral land, and quite frankly didn't have any say in all of these beautiful buildings being built and the landscape changing. And so I really hope folks take the time to understand tribal governance systems and place-based, what that looks like for you geographically, because reproductive health in the future looks like people in that community saying, this is what we need. Just because we're native from New Mexico does not mean we know what native folks in South Dakota and North Dakota need. We want them to be able to define based on their culture, their language, the resources around them, their community members, and what resources they have to come together and create that future for themselves. Because that's what our tribal communities did across the country. We looked at where we lived and who was around us, and that's how we took care of our families. And it sounds like very theoretical or philosophical, but it's really not, because the blueprint has been there since time immemorial, and white folks frankly have taken to documenting as much as possible. And there are incredible indigenous scholars from across the globe who talk about the concept of land back right here. It doesn't necessarily mean, maybe for some native folks, not for me, it doesn't mean get on the Santa Maria and head back to Europe. For me, it means help us take care of the land that we have now. Help us be better stewards of the resources that we have, whether it's water, whether it's being more conscious about oil and gas and fracking, which is something that New Mexico deals with. We have the Permian Basin, and one of our most sacred sites at Chaco Canyon is currently at risk because of oil and gas fracking, and there are high rates of reproductive cancers for Navajo women. So all of these things are interconnected. Some concrete things, unfortunately, philanthropy has not given as much. And so I really echo what my colleague here says about giving doesn't have to be a lot, but we're seeing those donations go down and we're seeing the need go up. And so we really need folks to do the monthly donations. We have donors from across the globe who give $1 a month, and we know that they could be spending that dollar anywhere else, but for us, that's such a gift. And so I really ask that if you have access to philanthropy or to foundations, please talk to me about how we can stay in touch and consider giving us a bigger grant or donating to us monthly.
So, two things in terms of like liberated future for abortion. I think uncompromised access to where folks can get the abortion they want and need, the way they want it, when they want it, where they need it and want it in their community. That's the most eloquent way of saying things. I think another piece for a true future is a reality check for those of you who look like me, and that we are not just listening to Black and Brown and Indigenous people that are leading this work and this movement work, but we're actually following step and getting in line and following really that elimination of like white feminism, because if we're centering people that look like me that already have access or privileges in a lot of ways, and they're the ones setting the tone on the policy level or driving the big national reproductive groups, we are not actually moving towards full access. And true reproductive justice and true reproductive sovereignty. And I think that that is a critical piece for me that I think we need to be very mindful of. And then I think in terms of a concrete action, thank you, Danielle, for doing my job of plugging to support your local abortion fund. I would also say with your phones, dig into and look up pregnancy justice. That organization is shining the light and focuses on criminalization of pregnancy. And as we have seen over the years, the increased realities of folks on the ground of being criminalized for their pregnancy outcomes, the choices that they've made, and the abortions that they've tried to access. It's a really important organization, and so not only your sustaining monthly gift to the local funds up here, but also organizations like Pregnancy Justice.
So I'm also going to answer this question and as we wrap. So yes to all those things. I would say, did everyone get a pin or a sticker or a tote outside? If you didn't, please grab one, because the power of wearing the word abortion on a t-shirt, on a pin, or a tote is cultural like power that has cannot be understated. Like, it means so much to people walking down the street, right? It means so much to strangers, but guess what really means a lot to you? It means a lot to the person in your life who's gonna need or who's had an abortion, right? Everybody here knows or is 2 people here who've had an abortion, so you know at least 2, but I'm sure, I know statistically there's at least some others in this audience and in this space. So by wearing that, you are showing the person that you love, right, that you support them, and you're showing them that if they find themselves with an unwanted pregnancy or an unviable pregnancy or whatever pregnancy that they can no longer have, that you are a resource to them, right? And the amount of people who are holding that internal stigma, right, who don't actually share that they need or have had an abortion until like years later when they're like watching a play like this and they're like, by the way, right, that's, we have to fight against that. And it's connected to...
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Siri was moved. It's but I think that's connected to my vision of what reproductive justice looks like. Her name's Esther, right? I'm like, I was like catching myself. I'm like, what's the name of this character? Okay, so Esther, who is Esther's not here. Okay, well, Nuha, the super talented actress who plays Esther. My vision of reproductive justice is a world of community care, is a world of Esthers, right? Of people who deal with their own messy shit, who love you despite your messy shit, and when you say let go, they say no, right? That is my future of reproductive justice that I hope is a future that we can all build together. Thank you so much to our panelists.